hosted by the Bob Graham Center Student Fellows. My name is Marianne Burnetson, and I am the Associate Director of the Graham Center and advisor to the Fellows, a group of whom I am extremely fond of. We are thrilled to host you this evening and celebrate Women's History Month through this dynamic panel of accomplished leaders. For those of you joining us at home, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank a few individuals. First is Joan Forrest. Although she is not here tonight in person, she has promised me she is watching the live stream. Joan is a UF graduate, member of our Council of Advisors, the Dean's Leadership Council, and mentors students through the Beyond 120 program. Joan is a fierce supporter and advocate for developing young leaders. Her generosity makes this event possible each year, and we are grateful for her support. I'd also like to thank this year's co-chairs, Stephanie Odom and RJ De La Salle. Along with the Women in Leadership Planning Committee, your work to bring this dynamic program together does not go unnoticed, and we appreciate you all greatly. Following the panel discussion, we will have a chance for questions from the audience. If you are watching from home, please use the chat feature on YouTube Live to ask your question remotely. Now, please join me in welcoming our moderator for the evening, Amelia Packham, a third-year political science and women's studies major here at UF and the Vice President of Communications for the Fellows. Welcome, Amelia.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm pleased to introduce our panelists for this evening, and I'll begin with Ellen Connelly Taaffe. Ellen Connelly Taaffe is the Women's Leadership Director at Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management and has a distinguished career spanning Fortune 500 companies and independent board directorships alike. Now, a professor at Northwestern, she shares her expertise through writing, speaking engagements, and her popular book, The Mirrored Door. Dr. Trish Travis is an Associate Dean at the University of Florida College of Liberal Arts and Sciences and Associate Professor in UF's Department of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies. She has also authored The Language of the Heart, 12-Step Recovery from Alcoholics Anonymous to Oprah Winfrey. Dr. Travis's research interests are in gender and popular cultures and medicine in the 20th century United States. Reina Saco serves as Commissioner for the City of Gainesville, where she was first elected in 2020. She earned her JD from UF Law in 2017 and began her legal career as an Equal Justice Works Fellow at the Florida Legal Services. In addition to her seat on the City Commission, she currently serves on the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council. Mary Kate Flynn is a double Gator, earning her MBA and MHA here at UF. Following her graduate program, she joined UF Health as an operations manager. In this capacity, she has spearheaded groundbreaking initiatives like Florida's first mobile stroke unit. Prior to joining UF Health, Mary Kate worked at LifeSouth, a community-based blood supplier in Florida. Thank you each for spending your evening with us and sharing your insights. We are fortunate to hear from each of you, serving in a variety of both public and private sectors. I will start off tonight's panel with an individual question for each of you. Beginning with Professor Connelly Taaffe. As director of the Women's Leadership Program at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, what advice have you given students to support and empower women in leadership roles?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. You know, I wrote this book, The Mirrored Door, and so my first piece of advice for anyone who wants to support women is be a door opener. Open the door for other women. And I think you can do that through raising visibility, through not just mentoring, but sponsoring, which is really putting your capital behind someone else, recommending them when they're not in the room. I also think it's all about amplifying their voices. The simplest things like meeting management, making sure that opinions are heard, not interrupted, not looked over, and going back to those ideas, so amplifying their voices. and lots of other things that I share in the book. And the idea of the mirror door is that so often when, for many women, when we face opportunity, whether it's raising our hands or moving forward to a promotion, sometimes we reflect inward and think we're not ready or we're not worthy when we really are. I know all of you here, I couldn't get into Florida these days. I know all of you are. So we need to open the door for ourselves, but we also need people in our lives to help show our potential, help us see, yeah, you can do that as well. So I'll step down off my soapbox here.
Thank you for those incredible insights. Dr. Travis, you shared a little bit with us last night about your untraditional route into academia. Could you elaborate upon that and share how your lived experiences brought you where you are today within the UF College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and what lessons you've learned from it?
Thanks, Amelia. So to demystify that, it makes me sound much more interesting than I actually am. My route into academia was not really that untraditional. I worked for several years as a cook and event planner in New York City when I was an undergraduate there. So it was a part-time job I did when I was in college, and after a few years of doing it full-time, I stopped. Then I became a high school teacher, then I went on to graduate school and became a college professor. That's not really that untraditional. I just converted my part-time college job into a full-time job for a little while. It is a little untraditional because many people who work in the academy, which is a head position, a head job, have not done handwork before. Working as a cook is a hand job. Job you do with your hands, sorry. And that is very unusual in the professoriate today. We have a very stratified society in the United States, and people who do work with their hands are often not people that we think of as working in a university, especially not as faculty. I was a cook, I managed a kitchen with other cooks in it, and I worked as an event planner. So I put on shows like this one with food. I could tell you exactly how many hours it took to do the setup and the prep for the food that was upstairs, probably price out each of the dishes for you and tell you how much the caterer made on this job tonight. That work has been really important to me for two reasons in my role as a faculty member and now as the associate dean in the college. The first thing is I try to teach people who may not go on to work with their heads as their main gig after college or forever. People who do work with their hands are smart, are ambitious, are key parts of American society. And that work is often devalued in a university that is educating people primarily to go on and be knowledge workers. I try to remember that my classroom is full of people for whom work with their hands is something they have done, something they may do now, something that they may go on to do in the future, and something that their family members do. And that tradition of hand work doesn't mean that they're not smart or intellectually ambitious. So that orientation to that part of the economy, I think, has made me a more democratic and inclusive teacher in a lot of ways. Running a kitchen is not that different from running a department at the university or running the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. You got a lot of people who are working really fast with hot things and spilled things, and you got a lot of talent that's trying to move fast in a lot of different directions. If you guys watch Top Chef, that's not very realistic. If you watch The Bear, that's a lot more realistic picture of what a restaurant kitchen or a professional kitchen looks like. You got a lot of people with all of their issues trying to get their stuff worked out in a high-pressure environment that's often very noisy, not just with the sounds of the kitchen, but with people's personalities. those skills that I learned managing a crew of like 10 or 12 people, once we had to do a wedding on a boat in the Hudson River, and we didn't realize before we got to the job site that there was no running water on the boat. So trying to fix up on the fly and like innovate and make things work and keep the client happy, keep the staff willing to continue working, because if somebody walks off the job, then everything is screwed. Those are life lessons for managing in any situation. There's rarely a flame up with actual fire in the dean's office. Nobody's ever tipped over a big bucket of olive oil and spread it all over the floor in there, causing people to slip and fall and lots of things to break. I had to deal with problems like that when I managed a professional kitchen, and the dean's office often, obviously, is a different kind of place. But there are a lot of plates to juggle and a lot of tempers to manage, and I think that we often think of the work that you do just to make money while you're in school or because you're kind of marking time after you get out of school. We think of that as like, that's not really professional work, but you learn things about managing people and about watching a budget and about project management that will translate into lots of different places. So that's helped me in the jobs that I have had since and the job that I have now. So whatever it is you're doing now, be aware of it as laying groundwork for the future. You're not just marking time, you're setting yourself on a path for the next thing.
Thank you. I know I found that very insightful. Commissioner Saco, what motivated you to pursue a career in law and public service? And could you also tell us how your personal background influences your approach to governance as a Gainesville City Commissioner?
So I never wanted to go to law school. I was gonna go be a diplomat, and it's a good thing I didn't, because I'm not good at that. Like, I'm not. I was home for summer break, and I remember, I distinctly remember being in the car and my dad saying, "So when are you applying to law school?" And me going, "Oh, I'm not going to law school." I have no memory of the next several months until I'm sitting for the LSAT. So all I know is my immigrant dad told his eldest daughter that he brought here at 4 years old, "When are you going to law school?" And then I went to law school, because that's what you do. And I was miserable the whole time I was there. Didn't want to be there. I did not know what I was getting into. I did not know what a bar exam was. Fun fact, you have to pay money after you pay money for law school to test. Your law degree means nothing without the bar in the conventional sense. And so I was not happy being there next to people who would say, like, "Well, my mom, my dad, my uncle, my brother, all these people went here, and now some are judges, and they are, like, run this law firm, and I can do whatever." I was like, I am not impressed by this. Also, I don't care. I was very much not the traditional student on campus, which made me fun and memorable, if not popular. But I finished. I ended up, was not a great student. I was a mediocre law student. I was a mediocre, very passive learner. So I didn't do all the high achieving type A, I have to know everything. I was me. And that means I didn't get the really cool paid internships. I didn't go on to be in these top law firms where, you know, everybody wears a suit, everywhere it looks like suits, like every day. Did not get to do that. And my first internship, because you have to get one, you don't get the summers off, was with Three Rivers Legal Services, because they were just desperate for people, and I was a body. And I started there helping in their pro se, so you represent yourself, pro se family law clinic. They're a divorce clinic where they just kind of help people prepare, give some light advice, and say, you can go fill this out, turn it into the clerk of the court, and be on your way. And I saw a lot of desperation, a lot of need, and a range of people who just needed some help. They're not dumb by any standard, they just don't understand the system at all. And every internship I had after that was around public service, about public interest, helping those who are income limited, those who are language limited, who just don't have the traditional access or the privileges we all do. So came time to apply for jobs, and I got rejected by like 24 of them. I got a rejection letter that was time-stamped the day I had the interview. And I had the last interview of the day. So I don't know if they just called up the home office and be like, send the rejection letter, but I kept that one because, damn. But I got rejected from a lot of jobs, and a fellowship that did not exist when I started applying to jobs popped open May. So I'm taking finals, I'm studying for the bar, and this fellowship pops up. I had a bunch of professors tell me, you should apply for this, it's perfect for you. And it was basically giving me money for 2 years, go do what you want to do, whatever you want to do about immigrants and housing. Go. And the program was designed, the project was designed by people who had never really been around immigrants, and they really wanted class action lawsuits with migrant farm workers who are mostly undocumented, and somehow in their minds, like, large groups of undocumented farm workers are going to go to courthouses and be around, constantly available for this. So we modified a lot, and I got involved with the Alachua County Labor Coalition because they wanted to do a giant renters' rights overhaul project, and we'd go to City Hall and we'd try to work, and the city attorney would constantly be like, oh, well, here's a counterpoint. But I've already spoken my 3 minutes as the public. My clients who are the Labor Coalition have already spoken. We don't get a counterpoint. We don't get a second bite of the apple. We don't get to talk again. There were just so many small things of shutting down because there's an attorney telling the commission, no, you can't do that, or I don't advise you do that. I remember just getting mad one day and be like, I'm just gonna do this myself. You can't tell me no if I'm your boss, right? And similar to going to law school, next thing I know, I'm filling out paperwork. I'm mostly joking. I did an analysis to make sure I could afford to drop my job to go do this. But it was mostly motivated, I say spite, but it was a sense of justice where there are people who need help, and because you are risk averse, and that's your job, fine, you are telling people who have a lot of power to make small, important changes, don't bother. Don't even try. And so when I got on there, it was really about being a voice for a community that isn't ever at City Hall. They're working, they're raising children, they're afraid to be somewhere with a police officer. And I ended up being their voice for them.
Thank you. Your commitment to public service is truly admirable. And Mary Kate, you work in healthcare operations, and it's been instrumental in pioneering those initiatives I talked about earlier here at UF Health. Could you tell us about your work and what motivated you to pursue such innovative projects? And as a double gator, could you also speak to your graduate degrees and how they've helped you in your career?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you guys for letting me be here today. So describing my work is very well done in the and other duties as assigned. So I get to work on anything that they tell me to do, which is what led me to the mobile stroke unit. I have been at UF Health for 10 years, and so because of that, I know the players. And so when there are new initiatives that come in, I am one of the first go-tos to say, how do we make it happen? So for those of you that don't know what the mobile stroke unit is, I'll give you a little background. It is an ambulance with a CT scanner in it. So if somebody presents with stroke-like symptoms through the fire department or in your backyard, you can call, they will get dispatched. They will be scanned in the driveway, then telemedicine. So the physician is on a camera and the patient is in, and the healthcare providers are talking to each other. They can see the images from the truck where they are. And then we actually start to administer care on that mobile stroke unit, which gets us there faster, which saves brain cells, which ultimately, hopefully, will lead to a full recovery. I am not clinical, so I learned all of that while trying to learn how to start this thing. So what I get to do in my job every day is bring the people together to make the things and initiatives happen to change people's lives, to save their lives and to make them have the full recovery from a stroke, or to get their mom through the ER faster, which if anybody's experienced our ER, we are still working on it, I promise. Things like that. I don't have to touch the patient, which nobody wants me to do that. But I do get to do that behind the scenes and say, hey, and I get these choices of this cost us $100,000 more, but in the long run, we're going to save patients, or we're going to save time, or it's going to be a better patient flow. So those are the things I get to do in my everyday job. And my graduate degrees got me there by giving me the step there to get the fellowship, which then put my foot in the door to make me realize I actually do like healthcare and I like being in that world. And I did this probably will offend a lot of people, but I did my internship in policy, healthcare policy, and realized it was not for me. So it's very ironic that I get to be here today to talk to a bunch of policy people about the operational side. So.
Thank you. You all have such incredible stories and backgrounds, but we'll now move towards our general question posed to all four of you. And we'll begin again with Professor Taaffe. What's one piece of advice that was crucial for you as a young woman beginning your career?
So I think an important piece of advice for me was to learn how to give feedback. And part of it, when I became a manager of people, I loved motivating people. I loved the people management side of my jobs. But over time, as I had more difficult conversations and things like that, I frankly, I struggled with it. I wanted to be liked. I didn't want to hurt people, all the things that sort of hold us back from being really open and honest and fair to people that we need to give feedback to. And the piece of advice I got, I was very much a caring manager, but the advice was tap into the courage that you have and use your care to be candid, to take the risk of telling people what I observed, what was possibly getting in their way. And I really sort of shifted in how I thought about the importance of being honest and tapping into my care for the department or the team or the organization to confront issues, to say what needs to be said. And I think now, years later, I am that person who will say, wait a minute, let's go back to why are we really doing this? Or that person who gives honest feedback in a way that is caring so that it can be impactful. But I always appreciate that tap into the care that you have, because you're really not doing anyone any favors by shielding them, saying, oh, you're just doing fine, if they are not.
Thank you.
So I don't know that I ever really got generalizable advice at the start of my career. So I'm going to backdate my career to when I was growing up. My grandfather was a big influence on me growing up. He was a first-generation American. He was Irish. That's not an ethnic group that is often thought of as really valuing women's intelligence. But my grandfather was a little different than the average first-generation Irishman, and he was really strong believer in women's academic success. My mom and her sister went to Catholic girls' school that was known in Dallas, which is where I grew up, for its outstanding academic reputation. My mom was the valedictorian of her high school class, and my grandfather would always point to her and talk about how smart she was. That's how she could survive getting a divorce, which was a scandal. That's how she could make a home for me so that I could go to private Catholic school when I was growing up. So my grandfather's advice to me, and he would always raise his finger like this, like to get everybody's attention. He was like, "Sugar, you're smarter than any boy in the room." And growing up with that voice in my head, not just from my mom, who was a feminist, but from the man who was most important to me growing up, that has always, I think, given me a weird edge over many of the women that I have known and admired in my life, who would often doubt themselves right at the last minute and maybe hang back a little bit. My grandfather's voice always overrode my grandmother's voice, which was that if you talk too much, he'll never ask you out on another date. So that idea, you're smarter than any boy in the room, is the piece of advice or the wisdom that I was able to take into my performance in school, my performance in the workplace, and then my performance over the course of my career. I'm not saying it's a good thing to be thinking about yourself as better than other people. There's a risk to that. But growing up at a time and in a place where it was too easy for women to think that they needed to hang back, that really made a difference to me long term.
Thank you for sharing that. Commissioner Saco.
Okay, so it's one half piece that segues into another. In law school, because they try to make sure you're employed because it reflects well on the law school, they were trying to encourage mostly the female students to apply for things. And I remember one of the professors bringing up, they've done studies where if there's a job with like 10 requirements and if a man meets just one, like, yeah, I've been into a hospital, I could be a doctor, like he'll apply. But if a woman isn't all 10 things and then another 15 that they would really extra like to fluff it up, they're like, I can't apply, I shouldn't apply, I'm just gonna get rejected. So you get rejected by not even trying. And so that's a piece that stayed with me of being brazen and taking risks. Try. If you don't even start, you've already defeated yourself. You've already given yourself the rejection letter yourself, which is when I applied to my fellowship. I was like, I don't know. I think I'm a good fit, but I don't know. I've already been rejected by 24 places. I'm kind of bruised and battered right now, but I applied anyway. And the piece that really got me going, that's a continuation of it, is my mentor on the job, my supervisor, we're still friends, she's great. I remember saying, why did you pick me? Because I got a B in property law. I don't know housing law. I clearly almost failed. Why did you get me? She's like, oh, because you've worked with homeless people, you speak Spanish, you've worked with immigrants, you come from an immigrant background, you have the people skills. I can teach you housing law. That's gonna change tomorrow. That doesn't matter. I can't teach you how to be nice to people and care. Can't teach you how to care about people. So it was very much take this risk because you may be what they want without knowing that's what they actually want or are looking for. Often on paper, you kind of put the things you're supposed to put, and then when you're being interviewed, you're like, this is what I actually want. But to take that risk, and I think she kind of put the frosting on the cake there. It's you are what we wanted. Forget everything else. Yeah. This is what we wanted. Just don't, because I think a lot of that I talk to are third and fourth years and trying to figure out what to do. If you don't even bother, you're already lost. So you can try. And if you lose, well, maybe you need to lose 24 times before someone takes you. But you need to try.
I love all of this advice, and I think mine, well, it sort of tailors into it, but I think the best piece of advice is it's okay not to know everything. You start a job and you're the new person there, so you can look around and look to your coworkers and to your boss, and they're gonna go into a meeting and they're gonna know everything there is to know, the politics behind it, the budget, the this, the that, and you can feel overwhelmed and not quite understand why you're here or that you can do the job, that you would have the confidence to do it. And I think going in knowing it's okay not to know everything and that you will have that thirst and the eagerness to actually go and learn everything along the way. And one day you'll look back and you'll say to yourself, oh, I can do this, and I am doing it, and here we go. So I think it's okay not to know everything.
Thank you all for your insights. I'm sure I can speak for the entire room by saying I'm inspired by each and every one of you. I would now like to invite my co-moderator, Celine Siltas, up to do the audience portion of our question and answer. Celine.
Hi everyone, my name is Celine Siltas and I'm a Bob Graham Center Student Fellow. I am so grateful to be here today to hear from these wonderful, accomplished women. Like Amelia mentioned, we will now be moving into our audience Q&A. If you have a question that you would like to ask to an individual or to the whole panel, please raise your hand and someone will bring the mic over to you. If you are joining us virtually, you should be able to click the comment bubble in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to ask questions. Does anyone have a question?
Can each of you talk a little bit about what you think your most significant leadership challenge has been and how have you addressed it?
Maybe Commissioner Saco, would you like to start us off?
Cool. And demonstrating the humility to learn and grow. Contrary to popular belief. So one of the qualities that I've been told are admirable is my passion and my willingness to take risks and be assertive, which are not things you associate with women often. It's like, oh yeah, go you. Like, yeah. Letting it bleed into being a temper. And so it's a personal flaw at that point where you come to mistake temper for passion and you excuse yourself. So that's been hard, and if you Google me, you'll find out why. Where you are so convinced you are right, you are unwilling to negotiate. And there are some times that that's fine, but you need to, I have had to learn, is this my temper, or is this something I'm genuinely passionate about and needs to happen? Am I insulted, or am I right? So that has been a professional development and challenge, something I practice and am working on every day.
Go next. I think in true women in leadership form, it's, wanting to be liked by everybody. So I would say the challenge is the people, and managing those people and understanding, those difficult conversations that Ellen talked about earlier and how to have those while still having humility and empathy for your boss, for your, for your employee, for your coworker, are go a lot longer than a title or, giving them a raise or something to that effect. If you just sit and listen for a little while, I think you'll get pretty far. And it took a little while to understand that when you think you know everything and how should the spreadsheet look and how should the PowerPoint look, but at the same time, does it really matter if it's orange or blue? Probably not. And that's where you gotta realize that it's okay to have change, and it's okay to let that employee or that coworker be right and be in charge and take it. There's a reason you hired them. There's a reason they're there, and let them run with it.
Thank you so much. Any more? To the gentleman in the front? Oh, if you'd like to add something, you're more than welcome to. Of course.
Should I? Okay. I would say for me, I learned how to find my voice and raise it. I'm more introverted, and I would go into new situations and play the observer for too long. And I really needed to speak up earlier, like even in meetings, knowing I'm going to go in and I'll give you a little secret in the classroom, be the first one to raise your hand, or the first one, because the professor will always want to work with whatever you say. So if you're someone who's holding back. But for me, I would hold back too often, waiting till I say something that's just perfect and fabulous. And those points never come, or they don't, or someone else has that answer. So it happened for me in meetings, but in other things too, where I really needed to learn to put my opinion out there. And early in my career, I was up for a VP job and got some feedback. They're not sure you're tough enough. And part of that was I come off, I don't know how I come off today, but in my workforce or work places, I would come off as sort of warm and likable and friendly. And part of that is I do have sort of an inner determination and fierceness that it takes a little too long to show that. And so I really needed to find that about myself. I got great feedback to help me to do that, and it's something I actively continue to work on, like we all do. So we have these great strengths, but there's a double-edged sword to them as well.
Just to say the exact opposite, the thing that I have to work on is being the first one with my hand in the air every time, and always thinking, I got it, know it, can say it right now, don't need to wait, ready to go, and being too forthcoming and too direct. I feel like we might be on the same page with that.
And I think we're on the same page too.
So,
Seating arrangements.
so I mean, what I'm hearing on the panel is that there's a sort of Goldilocks problem here, where we've got a little too hot, a little too cold, and we're all in a work in progress to be just right. And I think that one of the things that I value most about opportunities like this or my women colleagues is that, you know, you can talk with your peers and your colleagues about those kinds of things and acknowledge that it's something that you can work on and get and give feedback about it, because we are all works in progress, and that is a good thing to be reminded of in an increasingly unforgiving workplace that we are all working in a changing global economy.
Once again, thank you so much for your insights. We'll move on to the next question.
Hi, thank you all for coming to speak to us tonight. My question is, as someone who is a cook in college right now, and someone who does come from a more untraditional background, and someone who is trying to study policy right now, how would you all try and say that, you know, your non-traditional background, could you say, gave you an up? Because right now, all of you stand as pretty significant leaders in your field. And, you know, I'd say most of us here can say that we all have our own unique stories, but how can you say that your non-traditional backgrounds brought you to the success you find yourselves in today? Thank you.
Dr. Travis, can we start with you?
Sure. I don't mind interacting with people who aren't exactly like me, and that's really, really important. That's all I'll say.
Would anyone else like to make a comment?
I can follow off on that one. I think I mentioned it earlier a little, you know, people aren't dumb. You just need to. So growing up in, if you know it, Hialeah, Florida, which is a tiny enclave of Spanish and English is the second language, I saw people who were lawyers doing nails. So I've been around people who are brilliant. They've just been transplanted somewhere where their skills don't matter because of language or something else. So I grew up similarly around people who are not the people I work with now, who are not the people I was in law school with. And I don't like the word minority, but for better or worse, I was the minority as a woman, as an immigrant, as ethnically speaking. So all these things, I think, gave me a little moxie of I have something to prove because I started so much lower. Like, I can see something to reach for. And I think that might be part of that. Like, I can see something to reach for because I've had to start 5 feet behind people. And that's a motivator. It can be a little discouraging, but I think it's been a motivator where some people might be discouraged by I have to work twice as hard to prove I'm half as good. It's like, okay, I'll work quadruple. That gets me to as good, right? It's been a motivator and fuel versus, well, I should just give up. So I think that, you know, I'm not what they had at law school, but you need more of me, and I'm going to prove that you can.
You'd like to comment, Professor Taaffe?
Yeah, I would just add in very similar. Being here at Florida, first generation college student, first one who doesn't have an MBA in brand management, like these other things, you can find yourself in those. I completely get fueled by being the underdog. And it's not necessarily like, I'll show you, but it's a bit of, I can do that too. I may not have what other people have, and sometimes that means we face more biases or different things like that, but you just got to keep the faith. There's your song. From last night, sorry.
And we have a question from the online chat. This is from Joan Forrest. Please discuss the importance of how your undergraduate academics and your undergraduate extracurricular roles contributed to your position today. Which had the most impact?
Well, we talked last night at dinner about the fact that when I went to college, there were no extracurricular roles. I took the hardest classes that I could. I worked 20 or 30 hours a week, and I partied a lot because it was New York City in the 80s, and I could go hear lots of punk bands, you know, for almost nothing every night of the week if I wanted to. So I was starved for intellectual life. I'd gone to a performing arts high school where you were limited in how many academic classes you could take, so I was dying to like learn more and know more and be cool and be a New York intellectual. And so I took a lot of really hard classes. I didn't have a single leadership position. I wasn't in any clubs. When I finished school, my resume was my GPA and the jobs that I'd worked to support myself, and that was pretty much what everybody I knew did. There were no internships, there was no experiential learning, there was no team building or anything like that. So I'll just have to say, sorry, Joan, it was academics all the way for me.
Of course, Professor Taaffe.
So continuing the opposites theme here. So when I was a freshman, the drinking age was 18, and then it got moved to 19 when I was a sophomore. So I would say I was less academically focused when I was here at Florida, but I did a ton of leadership activities. I was the kid in grade school and high school who ran for class president and lost, but all my leadership started at Florida. I was president of Kappa Delta and then president of the Panelists Council. They took a group of us up to Tallahassee to, so at the time we became registered lobbyists to focus on tuition increases and sadly the drinking age too. But and Bob Graham was the governor when I was here, so that's how old I am. But so quite opposite, but I was very academically oriented in high school, not so much in college, and then I made up for it when I got my MBA at Kellogg.
And again, on the same page, I also, internships were not a big thing. I think they were getting there, but it was more for the law students in that path. I was also in leadership in my sorority, preferred the bar over my class. So my undergrad was not exactly stellar. It wasn't until realizing kind of what I really wanted to do with my life after doing some working years to then go back to grad school where I figured out how to study appropriately, and B, just you were more engaged in your classes. And I think that is something that's overlooked a lot. If you don't love what you're doing, it's a lot harder to do well in those classes or find yourself in what you want to be and what kind of impact you want to make.
So I'm pretty sure my undergraduate activities got me on a list. So my undergraduate degrees are in Russian. So I'm really popular right now. And I was an overachieving kid. I came in with a bunch of college credit. I didn't finish my AA because my parents didn't understand what dual enrollment really was. So they didn't sign the form. So I didn't do as much as my other friends. And I kind of showed up to college. I don't know, it's just more class, right? And again, I love learning. I'm a nerd. I have a whole library in my house. Like, I want to learn. I graduated, I think, with like close to 180 credits in 4 years. They approved me multiple times to getting 21 credits because I was like, I want to keep learning, while also doing club activities. And I had to laugh because my activities were running the Russian club. And then I had to translate whatever we were printing at like the student place. Like, we won't print this. What is this? It's like, it's a 1950s poster, 1, and 2, it says, don't talk. So it was interesting to have those. But if I have to say the undergraduate activity, extracurricular, that I'm going to deviate real hard here, that actually has had the longest impact on me was I went to a Catholic church, which I know is not the answer that's been given around here, or that you'd expect. But I ended up going there. I made lifelong friends that I still have. Someone that I was confirmed with is godfather to my son, and actually married me and my husband. So it gave me a community outside of my track, outside of my academic track, outside of my professional track, and it has given me this kind of extracurricular, something outside of what I deal with every day, and people that are different, so I don't stay in my bubble of people. I have different spheres I can jump into and hear from and not be trapped in just this one echo.
Thank you so much.
So all four of you are, women leaders. I think it's easy to see kind of the positions you're in right now and see how much power and leadership you have. But could you guys talk about a time where you felt lost in your journey to where you guys are now as leaders and how you were able to navigate that, especially as a woman?
Where do I begin? No. I think for me, and I mentioned this briefly in the class earlier that I talked in today, I was working at Quaker Oats. PepsiCo bought us. I was VP of a division in Chicago. And when the acquisition went through, I was suddenly reporting to Frito-Lay in Dallas, flying down every single week. And I had just had my second daughter, 6 months earlier. And I was in a really difficult situation because the assumptions of the growth expectations on the business that I was running were just not sound. And those things happen sometimes. And a new person came in who I was working for who was really difficult. I had so many wonderful bosses over time, but when you work for a terrible, toxic boss, you can really feel lost. And I did, and I kept trying. And I was also sort of leading others where I was trying to explain why this is going to be a great thing when things changed for us really dramatically. So I was putting on a brave face for my people and trying to insulate them while I was getting beaten up by my boss. So really tough situation. The thing I shared with the class is I was just kind of burning out on both ends at, doing everything, or not everything, but doing a lot at home with two little kids under, 2.5 years old. And I went to I found I was grinding my teeth. And when the doctor told me that, and I said, what should I do about that? And he had been asking me other questions. He said, get a new boss. And I did. I ended up finding another path in PepsiCo that was a great thing. And I ended up, I was the first VP there to ask for a reduced schedule. They called it part-time, but it was really going from 60 hours to 40 hours. But I got to work from home. This is before the pandemic, so it was really rare. And it was what I needed to just, my mom passed away at that time. So a whole bunch of stuff happening together. And I finally took action about it, and it revitalized my career. And I went back to full-time and went to a bigger job like a year and a half later. So that's my sad tale.
I will echo that bad bosses really break the spirit. My mentor is also a minority woman, and then everyone above her was not like us, just opposites on all of those factors. And she was apparently shielding me from a lot of stuff, but she had her point where she left. She held out until my fellowship had ended, and she found a new job. And I think like a week after, I was getting destroyed because they couldn't take it out on her anymore. And so what they were taking out on her and then anger at her leaving was now being thrown at me. And I was supposed to stay on and do certain duties. Well, those got scrapped now because it felt a little bit like a bait and switch. And so I was doing work I wasn't passionate about. I was being screamed at about stuff I did know about by someone who doesn't know what I'm talking about. I was being told, well, he speaks some English, that's good enough, we don't have to interpret. I was like, that's an ethics problem, like, no. And just being told, you're wrong, you don't know what you're doing, I've been doing this for 40 years, and you've been doing it for 2, what do you know? And that really crushes a really young, like, you can nurture, and it takes a lot to nurture, and then you can crush with like one conversation. And I think that was the moment where I was like definitively like, you know what, I am gonna go file that paperwork. Like I am better than this. and I'm not actually helping anyone here. And when you have that kind of moment of clarity after all the despair, you're like, this is miserable. It's not worth what I'm getting paid. I've had that same realization at City Hall. So those low points can be helpful. Let's put it that way, where you kind of reassess and you pull yourself together.
I just want to add in, you are going to have ups and downs, and the more you can build your resilience, and that might be through health, through working out, it might be through the relationships you have, the people who know you, so that when you're in a situation when someone's not seeing you for who you are, who can help you set your mind straight, and ways to coach each other to be able to ask for what you want or to get out of a situation that's not working for you too.
I'm going to tell a slightly different story. I also have bad boss stories, and it's important to not let trash talk get you off your game and try to think about basketball in situations like that. But I want to talk about a different time, which is maybe more relevant to some of y'all right now. I took a semester off in college. All of that talk about being smarter than all the boys had a downside to it, which was that I felt like I'm going to prove it every day, and everybody's going to know I'm smarter than them. And that is a strong energy that can take you in a lot of good places, but it has a downside risk to it, which is that spending all your time proving things to other people can be really unhealthy. And I got to a certain point, in my undergraduate career where a variety of relationships with mentors and their expectations for my academic performance, and boyfriends who were like equals but slightly better, or were we competing or were we supporting each other? It's unclear. Or I really got unclear about who I was studying for and who I was being smart for and who I was trying to impress with my brain. And I really needed to just stop competing with everybody for a little while and just rest. And I think y'all's generation coming out of COVID has really elevated the conversation about rest in our culture. You all don't seem to do it very much, but I do hear more talk about it on social. And I think that y'all have been on these escalators that move really fast to get to a place like UF. I couldn't get into UF, much less NYU, where I was an undergraduate. I could never get in there now. Y'all are so focused on achievement. Your parents are so focused on achievement and on dual enrollment and on acceleration and graduating faster and like getting high test scores. All of that has really shaped y'all's lives. And I've been in my office with many students in their last year at UF just weeping because they don't know what to do next, because there's not an escalator to take to the next level. And, it's April, and soon it will be August, and in August I get a new lunchbox and I start the next grade, and I'm going to make all A's again next year, and there's a time when that just ends. Or you can just keep doing it because you don't really know what else to do. I sort of got to a point where I wasn't sure what to do next, so I took time off. I try to tell my students to take time off too, to rest, stop thinking about achievement, and start thinking about what actually gives you pleasure. That's a really hard lesson for a hard-charging generation like you all. It was super important for me. I rested, I refocused, I stopped thinking about what other people wanted from me, including my grandfather, and I could get a better, more healthy relationship to that advice than the one that I had had early on. So that's different from bad bosses. That's when the bad boss is in your head.
And I'll just add one quick caveat, or another scenario, I guess. Change is really hard. If you've been in the same place for a long time, and then all of a sudden everything starts to change, and you start to question, why are you here, and what are you doing, and am I valued? And I think the best thing is to go back to that. What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? Why did you stay in the first place? And really remembering those things, and focusing on those during the times of change to let everything else settle, and then you can go back in and find your place. But just, doing your job the way you keep, the way you can, and I think that that's another little twist to that.
Thank you so much. Our next question.
We have another question from the online chat from Victoria Lee Wang. Building off the last question regarding things that motivate you in the private or the public sector, what are some factors that seem to motivate workers the most, whether it stems from passion or external factors?
Free t-shirts. Much like students, free t-shirts. No, it depends on the worker and it depends on the person. I can't tell you where I go into some of my employees and they're like, that polo is a really cool polo. I'm like, but it's just a polo or a lunchbox. Those things do a lot more motivation for people than you would think. But in my industry in healthcare, it's also very easy. We bring it back to the patient stories and why we're here. And so every management meeting, we come back to a great patient story, something that our employees caught, a patient that survived their stroke, a patient that made it through something they shouldn't have made it through because of the amazing care that they got in our organization. And so that and some food help a lot.
I would just add to that food, yes, but helping people to see how they make a difference or how they fit in the big picture of whatever you're doing.
So I would add being engaged in what that worker does without micromanaging, which is a very thin razor's edge. So I think when I first started, I did all field trips because it was COVID, so I wasn't going to City Hall. So I was like, I'm just going to go to the fire station or the police station. I'm going to go to Public Works and see the Swamp Master, which is a really cool piece of machinery. And I got to learn bits and pieces of the everyday on the ground operation. Like enough to have a good conversation, enough that when any of our 2,400 employees says X, I was like, I know a little about that. I can carry on, and we can have a conversation. And that employee takes away that I do know what you do. I know where you are housed. I know what you do. I know what some of your struggles are. But I'm not going to try to tell you how to do your job. I know enough to understand what you are talking about, why it's important, and to respect your expertise on it. And I respect it enough to know to be informed, but I'm not gonna micromanage. And that's I think what City Hall employees like about me specifically. It's like, I trust that you know what you're doing. I'm gonna be involved, but I trust that you know what you're doing. And that goes a really long way towards getting some respect and appreciation.
Just to sort of take that one step further, I find that people are really motivated by transparent and humble leadership. I have a reputation for being the most no BS of the deans in the college, and I work really hard to cultivate that, respecting people enough to tell them as much of the truth as is strategically and legally allowed. And taking the time to inform them about the incredibly complicated workplace that they are in, to sympathize with the fact that, yes, it does seem like it's too complicated, doesn't it? I agree. And to talk with them as partners and collaborators and to listen to them with the same kind of respect that you would like them to have to you. People are very motivated to work with someone who will be that transparent and egalitarian with them.
Thank you so much. Our next question.
Hello. So going off of like the escalator point and like in terms of like barriers, like would you say there are any barriers like that you guys had to like get over like as like women in general or like throughout your career, and like how'd you overcome those barriers? And like in terms of like the future, like people who might be going through those barriers or situations, or is there any advice that you would like suggest to like be able to get through those situations?
So if you are, I can do this from two angles. If you are a woman, some people will look at you as you are at a disadvantage. Like, that is just a mindset they have. But I think more relevant to the room, if you are young. When I was running for office, I was doing some interviews to get an endorsement, and I could kind of overhear the interview for another candidate. And then when I came into the room, they asked me the question. I was like, well, some of your opponents think that you're just too young for this. You don't have enough experience, real world experience. I was 20, how old was I? I was 29. They were calling me a child. So I think that is, and I know a lot of you are really smart, so you're probably even younger than 20. Like, it's insane how early kids get into college. You have to overcome that barrier. You have to overcome that deep-seated, you're young, you're a woman, you haven't done this job, what do you know? And how I leveraged in that one is I've lived more in 29 years than some of my opponents have in their 70, 80 years. And I'd be happy to share what all of those are. And they're like, good answer. I did kind of list some of those, and they're like, okay, you can stop now, we get it. You have to kind of find the creative way around whatever they're saying is your limitation. And in my case, it's my age. I'm like, cool, in 29 years, I've crammed a lot in there. You find a way around it. It's never really, you find a way around a wall, either over, under, around, through. You find the way through that barrier. But that's a fun one that I had.
I think that in today's time, there certainly is some blatant, possibly illegal discrimination. But I think what's more common is biases that people aren't even aware of, or they're unconscious. And so it makes it really hard to navigate. Am I getting this feedback, or is this person acting this way because my work isn't up to snuff, or is it for another reason? And so there's not an easy answer around that. I think it's doing good work. It's asking questions to help understand what does the other side really think. So if they're thinking you're too young to be credible, well, what would it look like if I was credible? And so it's we're not giving you exact answers here, but it is taking steps to understand what the real issues might be, giving people a pass for maybe they're not even aware of this, or maybe it's not about a bias either. And so it's this like second generation bias that is more common now. So for me, it's about asking questions. So, one of the things that happens for women get more vague and more subjective feedback. Research has shown that. And so one way around that is if you get the feedback of like, you need more gravitas. What would it look like if I had more gravitas? Who around in the department has gravitas so I can look to them? And if they start to add up, it's all people that don't look like you. Maybe it is bias too. But you're trying to pinpoint what are the observable things that could get you further as well. So not an easy answer though, but great question.
So I think that's really smart, and I'm going to do that in my office tomorrow. The other thing that I would say has been really useful to me is nothing looks better on my arm than a middle-aged white man. I have had amazing mentors throughout my career. They have been almost exclusively white men. I'm not sure how that happened. I don't think they all thought of themselves as real feminist champions or anything. But in a power-structured world where white men continue to hold disproportionate amounts of power, despite important inroads that other people have made over the years, it's great to have a white guy who's willing to go to bat for you. And I'll also say that while we all would like mentors who look exactly like us, putting some burden of elevating you on a guy is better than asking a woman to do it, because she's probably got 6 people she's writing recommendations for. So, so I have had the luck of having fantastic straight white men mentor me and use their power to elevate me. I didn't strategize it that way, it just worked out. But you might think strategically about that. I'm looking at you, Dr. Jacobs. It's great to have, it's great to have a mentor who's a young feminist woman. It's great to have a mentor who's a queer man of color. Those people have a lot of taxes on their time and energy right now, and you want to try to spread the wealth around. You want more people in your corner, as many people as you can get, and the burden of mentoring disproportionately falls on young faculty, on women faculty, on faculty of color. There are a lot of smart white guys around here. They might not be as woke as you might like, but they're pretty smart, and most of them are pretty nice, and they can help you if you will ask them for their help. Maybe not all of them, but it's worth looking into. I have found that to be really helpful in making those jumps from place to place.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to our next question.
Hi. I wanted to ask, Mary Kate, you touched on this a little bit, but you spoke about not being a policy person. Obviously, this is a room full of policy people, but the question really more has to do with how did you know that policy wasn't for you? And I guess to the whole panel, how did you figure out what you weren't good at to therefore figure out what you are really good at?
That's a great question. I think in that time, I was like, this is frustrating. There's nothing getting done. Turns out that happens everywhere. It's not just in policy. And I'm in academic medicine, and we like to say that it takes a lot longer to get things done there. And so, just knowing that was frustrating, and then looking at it and realizing that this really truly happens in every industry and everywhere. And sometimes we make some rash decisions, and those aren't necessarily the greatest. I sort of took it and made that my little niche and said, look, let's look at everything at that 30,000 foot view and then try to get it done and push it and make sure, to your point about the transparency and just keeping people informed, I feel like that is such great advice, and it is like my platform, and everyone is going to know what's happening, so that if somebody gets asked a question, they can answer it appropriately. Doesn't mean that the correct information is then given, but at least they have the information so that no one is trying to come up with their own information through the policy or through, an executive meeting that you may not be a part of. Yeah.
I would add to that, for this group of people, my guess is you will be good at a lot of things, and it's going to be choosing what are you most attracted to, what gives you energy. In my case, when I moved from sales into brand management, I was being told, no, you'd be so good at this. And I did have results. I was pretty good at it, but it wasn't, after a while, it was draining me, and I was attracted to the consumer insights, the running the business, the other aspects. And so it's almost harder, I think, for all of you, because you'll be good at a lot of things, and it's finding what most drives you, because you're going to be working for a long time. You really will be. I don't know what it will be by the time you're my age, but you'll be working for a long time. So if you can enjoy what you do, so finding, figuring out, trying different things and seeing what sticks for you and you could imagine doing.
And I think the other thing about you'll be working for a long time is you might do a lot of things in your entry level and first few jobs, and then you'll get on a track to do something that goes in a specific direction, remembering that you don't have to stay on that track forever is really important. You can decide after a few years, oh, this other thing that I used to do, that I've got an opportunity for that now, and I really liked that, and I could sort of pivot in that direction or pick up a little bit of that and diversify my skill set. And I think that is something that the escalator from 5th grade through middle school, from middle school through high school, from high school through dual enrollment into UF and things like that, those escalators seem like they just go in one direction. It's hard to turn off of an escalator. And life is full of those turns and sort of circling back and then going ahead, and then you jump 2 flights at the same time. So remembering that that kind of thing is going to happen, that is much more normal than the kind of job I have had as a university professor. I've worked here 20 years, and I've been doing basically the same thing the entire time. University faculty are one of the last professions to work like that in the United States. And I don't think we're going to be doing it like that for much longer. The chances that you all will get a job at a corporation and work there for most of your life, it's almost impossible. So you'll have to pivot and change up, and that can be a really exciting thing, to like embrace something new for a different time of your life. A new technology appears, you're at a different situation with your family and loved ones, different part of the country, and you can just circle back to things that you learned this year and let those take you to the next step. That's a really good way to keep learning what it is that you really care about, because things that I still care about, a lot of the things that I cared about when I first started my career as a teacher, but some of them I don't really like them that much anymore. I graded, in 2017, I calculated that I graded my 10,000th paper. I'm kind of done grading papers now. I love writing well, I love teaching people how to write well. I don't love teaching writing anymore. I like other things, and I like project management. That hadn't even been invented when I started my career. So that's gonna happen to you, and you should be prepared for it and recognize it as an opportunity instead of seeing it as like, oh my God, I failed and I've now got to change up, and that's going to be really scary for me.
And I'll close up with, and I know it's going to sound hypocritical based on how I went into law school, but do not, I think as was said, you're all probably good at a lot of things, or you wouldn't be at UF right now. Do not let someone's expectations of what you would like or would be good at, because I'm sure there's like 20, 30 things you could be good at, if you do not have a genuine passion for it. And I'll give the example of having a passion for it does not equal I want to work this. I am very passionate about immigration issues and immigration policy reform. I will stand in traffic before I practice immigration law. Because the handful of cases I have tried to assist with, I mean, they ended up okay, but it's like, no, that's enough. I definitely do not want to do that. And everyone's like, but don't you care about it? I was like, yes. And I will happily donate money and like time and like, yeah, sure. I will not be the one doing it. And I would say just don't feel obligated or allow yourself to kind of be guilted into, don't you care about these starving children? Or don't you care about this sick puppy? It's like, yeah, I do. That doesn't mean I'm going to go be a vet, and it doesn't mean I'm going to go be a doctor. You have to, it's a lesson I had to learn eventually. You have to know what, like, I will suck at this. I will be miserable, and I will not deliver good anything if I do it. I should not do that. No matter what anyone thinks of you or thinks you're smart or great, like just know, have hard no's, and don't be afraid to give that hard no to yourself.
That's about all the time we have left for today. Again, thank you so much to our panelists, and we have a couple more thank yous to share. First, thank you to Ms. Forrest for your generous support of young women, to the Bob Graham Center for hosting this event, and to the Center's student fellows for staffing. This could not have been put on without all of you. A huge thank you to Stephanie Odom and RJ De La Salle once again, the co-chairs of this event. Most importantly, thank you to everyone who came out today. I know I definitely was inspired by these women today, as I hope you were. Please be sure to check out our YouTube page for the recording and visit our table in the back to subscribe to our newsletters and learn about upcoming events at the center. Once again, thank you all so much.